Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome and thank you for joining after lunch. I hope that you're all feeling not too full, but full enough that you can keep attention. So you know those sessions where they tell you the secret of something, and you're like, this is kind of too good to be true. Well, this is one of those. So do pay attention. We all know that conversations normally start like this. You hear about a piece of technology, and you like the idea of that piece of technology or that solution. You walk in and you tell your CFO. The CFO is super excited about it. The CFO then tells the CEO he's super excited about it as well. Don't ask about the cost, don't ask about what it's going to do. And they just say yes. Sound familiar? Of course it doesn't, right? Doesn't sound familiar at all. So today we're going to talk about those challenges a little bit. The session is called Translating Tech into Approvals, the Art of Selling Up. We're going to be joined by Kevin, we're going to be joined by Bill, by Paul, and by Freddie shortly. So my name's George Franklin. I lead the sales team over at QuadBridge. I've been with QuadBridge about 3 years. Feel free to ask me anything about what we do and how we do it. And without further ado, I'd like to invite the guys on stage. Paul recommended I go by order of height, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to invite you first. So, Paul from Leroux, please join. Wherever you want, Paulie.
You get first pick on there.
Bill?
I noticed Paul's just singing something.
It's an English-Irish thing.
It's always safer for us to be further away.
And you do have a wireless mic, so everyone can hear that weird voice of yours as well. Kevin, if you wouldn't mind joining.
I'm half English, half Irish, so maybe I should sit between them.
And last but not least, Freddie. Yes, can we get a round of applause? Actually, no. Are you comfortable?
No.
So do you want to start quickly by introducing yourselves a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then we'll jump into it. I'll start with you, Paulie.
Yeah, go first. I'm Paul O'Reilly. I'm the CTO of Leroux. Leroux is a large insurance brokerage here in Quebec, so anyone local who needs insurance, call us, don't call anyone else. We are essentially a fintech. We're a financially regulated distributor of insurance products in Quebec, and from a technology perspective, we are an information business.
Cheers, Paul.
Hello, I'm Bill Samblin from the International Group. The International Group is a wax manufacturer. We have a vertical where we take wax or crude out of the oil fields in Wyoming, goes through a small refinery in Salt Lake City, makes diesel. The byproduct is a waxy product that gets rail carted to a plant south of Buffalo, and then we make paraffin wax. We move about 1 billion pounds of wax a year. Goes into candles, packaging, tires, and 100 other things.
Cheers, Bill. Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Wright, and I'm the CTO of QuadBridge. I don't need to tell you what they do because we're spending the next 3 days telling you that. But I'm here actually on an interim basis, and my background has been in this space, though. I worked for Softchoice in the same role for a number of years, that along with field services, and I spent maybe 15 years at GE before that.
Perfect. The last one, Spanish guy, nothing to do with the Irish.
Half Irish, half English. Like the English channel.
That's okay, the Spanish people keep losing every battle in history anyway. So yeah, Freddie Martinez, I'm the CPO for Morgan Construction and Environmental. We're based out of Alberta. We focus on the heavy construction, so if you know from McMurray, that's what we are. We do everything in everything, so anything from mining, looking at data analytics on how the equipment is functioning all the way down to supporting the business and making the right decisions in Canada and as well now in the US as well.
Cool. All right, thank you guys. Again, thank you for joining. Thank you everybody for taking your time. So I'm going to jump right into it. And forgive me guys, for some reason this flicker keeps jumping through all of the questions I want to ask. It's not meant to be a scrolling background. So, I'm going to start with what types of projects do you find easiest and hardest to get approval for? Paul?
Large one-off expenses are definitely the hardest. The easiest for us is things which are monthly, which can be built into just a general run rate and pre-approved budgets of the company. So at the moment, for example, with QuadBridge, we're doing a big replacement of network hardware. That's one big dollar figure is very hard to get the approval for, but monthly financing connected to the lifespan of the equipment is much easier.
Bill?
Yeah, we were set up. I have a called the MIS steering team, which has the top executives involved in the company, and I meet a little more than a month, well, once a month or so. So they know what they want for different things. Obviously, I guide them a lot to do with that, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. The projects are kind of all the same. If they want them, we get the justification, and the money's there. So it's a bit of having that alignment with the business, that it's not me coming up. I mean, there's obviously lots of ideas that we come up with over the IT side, the MIS side, but at the end of the day, involving the business people on a regular basis, you get to know what they want, and you're working towards that approval all the time.
Great. Yeah, maybe a bit of a different angle. I find that projects that have a risk associated with them, you're going to maybe have a security vulnerability you can plug, or a financial exposure. Those tend to be a lot easier to get approved without heavy business sponsorship. And so it's kind of counterintuitive, but whenever somebody from IT, unless you're got lots of tenure and credibility, it's very unusual for a business, for an IT person to come in and say, this is going to grow the business and drive revenue without having heavy sponsorship from the business. And so, whenever you have a project that more originates from IT, I always find big risks, lots of expense being mitigated is a much easier sell than, hey, we can grow the business with this. In those instances, I always find you have to really lean heavily and prepare with a business sponsor.
So the risk element, you're saying, so I like that. So you're saying to get things approved is easier when it's not so much the shiny new toy and it's going to do this, that,
It's just
10 times faster and
counterintuitive mainly, but perhaps. But I think it's just human psychology, right? If something is people are always going to react and accept a risk more and try to plug it, and they're going to be skeptical of a benefit, and they're going to question it. And so just my overall, my batting average is much higher when I'm identifying a problem or a potential risk than it is on like, hey, this is going to grow our business by X%. It's not that those projects can't succeed. I think you just really got to get behind a business owner in those instances.
So what types of projects would be less risky versus others?
Well, I mean, not very general.
Yeah.
Security is,
Right.
the ultimate risk, right? Like it's the hot topic, and people in certain industries, they'll throw money at security all day long. I think an example.
But everyone's solution is the most secure, right? Everyone's solution is the
You
best.
could take an e-commerce solution, maybe you could take a CRM solution, you could take artificial intelligence obviously is the big thing right now. Those are all things that in many ways could play to the, hey, we can grow our business and differentiate, which by the way are the most exciting projects that we work on. I just find that you got to fall in line with a business owner on those ones a lot more in my experience.
Okay. Brilliant.
Well, I'll mimic a lot of that, but construction, if you ever work in construction, especially around civil construction, they're I'll call it quite stingy when it comes to spending money. Every project is essential. Is it harder? Absolutely, to get money out of it, but it comes down to the return on investment. The construction industry, and this is where we work, is all about the profitability. So if we're hitting the bottom line, for us it impacts quite heavily. So what hard projects to get across the line is usually projects that will impact the business in the multi-million-dollar scale. So competing with buying a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment versus a new ERP system is usually the big challenge. So getting that across and teaching them what the risk and what the return will be on building lean processes is usually the hardest part. What is easy on projects for us, or easy projects to move across, is technology projects. Ironically, if it's to do with cybersecurity or to refreshes or whatever the case is, to just improve the operations of the organization, those ones are pretty simple to push across. Is because one, they maybe don't even understand what that is, and honestly, they don't care because it doesn't impact them. It doesn't impact their bottom line.
Okay.
Like the nature of the business is a big part. Like I didn't mention security because we're a financial services company, trust-based database. So it's not even a factor. It's an ever-present, you know. So it's like you're saying for you, it's different margins. Like we would have, if we compromised on spending for security, you could lose the entire business in a week. You know, that's and it's happened in financial services.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about prioritizing. And if I could get some help just making sure that my questions show up here.
Tech guy.
Yeah, I'm obviously a tech guy. Let's go to the easy one. Can we talk about an example of a project that was complex at the beginning? And just for those of you in the audience, there's a couple of really good gems of information here, given what I've spoken about with the guys already. Can you share some examples of a project that has been successful and why, how you got it over the line, why it made sense for us? And if you don't mind, Bill, I want to start with you.
Sure thing. About 5 years ago, we got into the whole digitization thing. We used JD Edwards. We found a company that moved all our data into a SQL data warehouse. Quickly after that, I moved our CRM, our operational excellence, and what turned out to be the golden gem for us, this was all good, was our process control data. And if you think of IoT as kind of a new term in the last 5 or 10 years, for manufacturing plants, IoT's been going on for 50 years, 60 years. All your PLCs, your distributed control. I mean, distributed control is edge computing, as we talked this morning, so those things are there. But what we did is we brought all that data into the data warehouse, we summarized it into hourly data, and the product that comes into our plant south of Buffalo, there's a tower, and the stuff goes in the top, the way these towers work, and it pulls out different streams at different temperatures. And at the bottom of the tower is what they call vacuum bottoms, which is basically you don't get much for it. You sell it kind of at a loss. And in 2018 and 2019, that loss was about 8.5%. Got this data, worked with a couple of AI firms, and then I found a firm called Lytix, and we plugged the data into it, and it came back and said, raise this one temperature. And so we talked to the plant engineers, can we do this? We did it, and all of a sudden, the waste dropped right away by 2%. That was kind of the end of 2020. 2021, we averaged 5.2%. And what that meant for the company was that increased profits, not revenue, by over $10 million. That difference in 3% waste. Since then, last year we're down to 4.2%, and right now we're running at 3.2, which takes us near $20 million in extra profit. And this is for a private company. It's a big deal. And
Wow.
We're working on another unit there where we've increased the amount of wax by 6 million pounds a year with the same effort. And we're into another plant now where we think we're down 1% already, which the percentages there are worth more. And really what it was is using the machine learning models to basically identify what the best day ever was, or the best days, and then be able to go back and tell you how you did it. That basically, here I am, Homer Simpson, turn this one a little up, this one a little bit down, and all of a sudden you get more wax and less waste. And I believe that over the next 3 or 4 years, as we do the rest of the place, we are probably we're going to be 40 or 50 million dollars in increased profit. And magnitudes, like we're doubling the profit of the company.
This is incredible.
And what are we spending? $150,000 a year. So the ROI on this is silly. But that's AI in action. And I believe it's there for any pulp and paper, oil company, mining company, anything that moves liquids and has a variation in their yields or their waste. And they all do. You just ask them, show me your yield graph. And it's 5 or 6%. What if we could take that to the top 2%, or even better? And that's what we've been doing. It's really exciting.
Can you just go back, the influence of the MIS steering committee that you were part of, can you just elaborate on how they influence this entire outcome? Because I mean, this is one hell of a story.
In 2018 at a management meeting, they said we want better access to their data. And what they meant at that time was they wanted better access to their JD Edwards business data.
Okay.
And that's where I got the project to pull that across. Then it was kind of more or less my vision to bring the rest in and where we got to. And I spoke at a conference in San Francisco about this a year and a half ago, and I kind of said, yeah, you're 2 or 3 years ahead of the industry on what people are doing. And really the challenge is most, and they said most of their customers, and it's a historian to pull the data, have trouble figuring out how to get that data out of their system. That's the problem, to get this IoT data into a database where they can analyze it. And that's where they all get stuck. And then once you get behind that, past that, then you go that way. And we've gamified the operators. They basically have a screen where at the top it shows a target for yields. There's a bar there that shows how they're doing. And then we have 3 or 4 other bar graphs. And if they're green, it means they're doing what we want. And if they're yellow, they're within 5%. And if it's red, they're not doing what they want. So it means supervisors can come by and say they can view from their phone, they can view from anywhere, phone up the operator. How come we're red? And you may say, well, we've got a pump that's down and we're losing some suction, that's why. Or, well, right, yes, you're right, we need to change things. Why am I doing this? Because you're costing us $1,000 an hour or something like that. So it's really changed. Yeah, somebody mentioned gamification and some stuff. Well, that's what we've done. And that's how we got the operators to run, and it's working.
What story? What story, right?
Yeah.
AI for the good. Kevin, if you wouldn't mind sharing an example of a project difficult to get up. Yeah, it's off. Yeah, I think AI is interfering with this or something. It's off on its own.
I guess the AI,
I don't know
AI is going
what it's doing. Yeah.
Oh, okay, share an example of an IT.
There we go.
Yeah, maybe I'll share. The project itself will not be nearly as impactful and impressive as that one, but maybe the method will be kind of fun. So it's an old project. About almost 20 years ago, I was a newly minted CIO of a company that was in Toronto, for those of you that know Toronto well. They're right around Exhibition Stadium, and they were a pretty good-sized company, probably about 400 million in revenue, maybe 500-600 employees. And they had their whole data center in a wood frame building, in basically a closet. And in the bottom of this building, there was a wood shop, and there were 2 fast food restaurants with like grease fires, so there could have been grease fires, with lots of grease, lots of oil, and it was in a bad neighborhood too. You'd find people passed out in the morning in the parking lot, and so to me it was just like, oh my god, this is a disaster. And so I'm like, we got to get another data center and disaster recovery set up. So I put this whole presentation together for the board of directors of this company, and I had RPOs and RTOs and recovery time and all this stuff, and they were very non-technical. It was the chairman's friends. They were all older, didn't understand technology, and they didn't reject me, but they didn't give me the money. And so I went and commiserated with my operations leader at the time, the IT operations leader, and he's actually a talented computer animation person on the side, and we sort of talked about just the circumstances, and so we created a cartoon with a spotlight that zoomed in on a homeless person passed out, and some liquor and a cigarette that lit up and lit the wood shop up, which went to the grease fire, and it kept sort of zooming back and forth to the data center, down to the fire, to the data center, down to the fire.
End of world scenario.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know, that the exhibition, we do a thing there every year with the snowbirds that fly over for Labor Day. And so just as the fire was going to hit the data center, one of the snowbirds came down and hit the building, blew it up. And we showed this video to the board, and it got approved. And so anyway, I don't know what the message there is, but I thought it was funny. No, I'm kidding. I do think that, obviously knowing your audience, I think when you're trying to sell a project is important, and you're often selling to people that really aren't technical. You can apply this to something very different today. Of course, no one would do anything as insane as that today. I'd say know your audience, and obviously we're all in sales to some extent. We just have to acknowledge that, right? You're always selling to someone, and in this case, it took a cartoon, I guess, to sell this really important thing. And we ended up with a nice data center hosted by somebody else, and the closet actually became our DR site for a few years until we moved everything out of the building.
Awesome. Freddie?
Well, those are exciting projects. For us, it's all the biggest projects that we've been working on is the maintenance of heavy equipment. So when you're looking at construction companies, they kind of rely a lot on to Excel. And if you're familiar with that tool, it's probably one of the best tools ever for the planners out there. So the story is simple. They had 2,000 different Excel spreadsheets running data sets, creating their own AI, predictive analytics to predict when the machine was going to fail. And if you look at some of the equipment in the Fort McMurray area, we're looking at $14, $15 million pieces of equipment. An engine alone can be $500,000 automatically. So we decided to go away from having all these different Excel spreadsheets that were linking to each other and had different data sets, and people were making mistakes and counting manually the meters of every machine, to implementing a solution that was going to centralize it, do the predictive analytics that they needed, and reduce the cost on potential damages. So we embarked into sitting down with the CFO and the CEO at the same time. So in this case, I wish I had a graphic designer that can actually do that. But we sat down, and what I ended up doing is putting this semi-quasi technical / business presentation for them, not thinking of who I was pitching this to. And it's over $1 million solution. They needed to see the picture right away. So the CEO had a 10-minute extension for attention. So he did not, if you didn't get those 10 minutes and sold it to him, he will be out. His brain already went into an acquisition mode to somebody else and other stuff.
Does it sound familiar at all?
So I sat with the CFO and kind of strategized it and sat down with the CEO shortly after that. And so the way I solved it is, buying stuff for your house, things that you need, and we started talking about the electricity and the power and all this other stuff that you needed for your household. And within 10 minutes, we were talking about what the solution can be, and we started showing him the graphs on the pre-implementation and what it would look for savings. So we ended up saving roughly $14 million after implementation if we were to implement this solution. But the ironic part is, as we were pitching this solution or this project, one of the machines up in Fort McMurray actually blew up. And that's because the mechanic who was supposed to go in there didn't do his job, and it's not his fault, it wasn't notified. So the Excel spreadsheet that they were using was a good example to go back to him and say, here, this just cost you $500,000. And that $500,000 could have been used for new staff or bonuses and whatever the case that we needed. So right away, he started seeing the picture and started seeing the problems that we were facing in the business. One, the centralization of data. Secondly, the problem with human mistakes that can happen all the time. And so we ended up implementing, if you're familiar with Trimble, Bit2W Maintain, which is it's a fantastic solution. We started implementing the solution where we started actually importing data into and started capturing data from many of the major equipment that we had in the field, and all automatically, everything was flowing quite nicely into it, until we started noticing major issues. And then right there, we were able to go back to the CEO and say, here's your ROI, here's what it actually took. So, in the matter of 12 months, the company has saved close to $200 million just on plain maintenance on equipment, and also not just on the heavy equipment, but also understanding what material they need to maintain that equipment going forward. So it actually worked out very well, which, by the way, now is kind of came 360, because now I'm actually enforcing electronic timesheets, which is the next bigger challenge that I'm going to be facing. And well, I'll let you know what happened after today.
So we've got money-making projects from Bill. Kev, yours is just all about using video. no, but it's about understanding, using the right medium and knowing your audience in terms of getting the message across. And Freddie, yours is cost saving, actually, and quick cost savings by the lot of it, and significant cost savings, right? Okay, so Mr. Paulie.
Yeah, ours is a bit different because like for distribution of financial services, it's all about the margins and efficiency of people. So it's not necessarily cost saving, it's more about the ability to scale the revenue of the company. So if it's asked like, who here has an insurance policy? I mean, it's a pretty great industry. You're legally required to have this product. It's amazing. Where the industry struggles is the off-the-shelf software is very inefficient. It's based on licensing by user accounts, so there's no incentive there to be able to improve efficiencies. And it's also it's a many-to-many problem. We're a company of 300 people. We deal with 130 institutions that we place policies with. 35 product lines across those 130. So you can imagine the variations in process and the complexity that comes with that. Someone has a simple case as a home and auto policy. We collect about 300 data points on you just for that, to be able to place that and then market it across all those places. So there's a lot there. But what's different maybe to the other organizations is our IT is 80% software developers because we're building our own to be a force multiplier. So our developers are making our brokers, we've been working on this for several years. It's going live now. I estimate they'll be 2.5 to 3 times more efficient than anyone else in the industry. So that basically puts us in kind of like the Amazon space. Compared to a brick and mortar shop, every other brokerage just will not be able to compete with us.
What does that mean, Paul, in terms of the 2 to 3x?
It would be so an average insurance broker might be able to have a revenue of maybe 200 to 250,000 per selling broker. Then you have your overhead costs and admins and support, etc., etc.
Okay.
So for smaller shops, it's a fine margin business, but there's still a lot of money moving around. It's the commission on insurance contracts is usually in the 20% range. So think about if you get into large commercial like Fort McMurray Construction, that could be a $20-25 million contract. You're talking $4 or $5 million in revenue from administering one client's file. There's a lot of money moving around. But if you have the efficiency to be able to keep much more of that money, but then for us, it's in more Amazon spaces, we're putting the money back into the software. We're extending that advantage that we have, extending the panel of insurance companies that we work with, so we're providing better and better option to our customers. And it's our own software, it's no one else's. So we can start marketing in areas where our competitors are, and we have an advantage that they can't buy, they can't replicate as much as they want. What that feeds into us then is that everything that we do on the traditional IT spending is related to that. So I mentioned network upgrade. Like for us, we could have gone for let's call it less premium, i.e. not Cisco equipment, and being able to refurbish a number of offices and locations, and it would have worked just fine. But for a future which is combined with that software development, where we want to scale up to 200 locations across North America and Europe, and we're very ambitious, then the more expensive per unit cost in something like a Meraki starts to make more sense. Because, well, how are we going to administer an office in Alberta? Well, Meraki, we spend a bit more, we don't have to. So it all kind of combines together into that. You ever see those diagrams like the advantage flywheel? By spending more on the software, we get more customers, more revenue. We can spend more on the software, and it just keeps going and going. So it's a different kind of outlook on it.
Is there a little bit of like jumping into the void with that? Because it sounds like the project's all about competitive advantage, right? That's what I'm hearing, like 2 to 3x against anyone else. But I mean, there must. Have you said to the CEO, "Come on, man, just do it"? I mean,
well, actually, the easiest thing for me is it wasn't my idea. So that's well, but it's so let's say in industries like financial services, being a little bit more reading The Economist about it, Apple, Amazon, and Google need to add another $1 trillion in market capitalization to justify everything. The only sectors left are healthcare and financial services that they can go into to do that. So which one are they going to go for? Healthcare sounds risky. It's going to be financial services. They're starting to eat around the edges of it, but it's coming. So for us, what we like is insurance distribution of financial products is hard. It's not a technically hard problem. It's just a lot of hard work. So in the UK, Amazon exited insurance brokerage because they just decided, it just wasn't fitting their ideal of revenue per unit sold or energy, etc. So what we're going to have is, let's say, compared to direct insurance writers can only sell their own products, and you still have to talk to someone on the phone. Insurance brokerages in the rest of the industry, they don't have the authority to do an instant sale online of an insurance contract. We have a business advantage that we have the contracts in place to be able to say online instantly, you are covered, here's your policy, you're set up for direct debit payments and everything is done. And also we're a brokerage, so we have a multi-market opportunity. So our difference is basically, we can be like Skyscanner, where you can pick the flight, pick the seat, and pick the meal, and you're done, and that's it.
The Skyscanner of insurance.
Everyone is going to be insured with us.
Yeah, I know that Paul's company that he works for actually do quite a lot of cybersecurity as well, cybersecurity insurance policies, right? So it's I don't want to go into too much detail, but for those of us that are somewhat curious about it, it's a hell of a world just in terms of the knowledge of cyber crime attempts and attacks that his company has to undergo. So I mean, it's a side conversation to the overall topic that we're going over here, but I mean, if you see Paul and you're curious about it, it's interesting. So obviously this screen has been a bit of a mess. Fortunately, I do have the questions here on my phone and in my head. And I'm seeing we've got 10 minutes left. So let's talk about the aftermath, right? And I don't mean the aftermath in a bad way. I mean the good. So you've gone through the approval process, you've had the fights, you've got the back and forth, you've prioritized, the solution is implemented, it has gone through testing, it's now gone into production, and people are using it. And it was maybe better or worse than you thought. Who knows? So what we're talking about is evaluating the success of said projects. Kev, I'll start with you. How does someone go about evaluating whether something was as successful as they thought it would be or not?
Well, obviously it starts with when you're getting the project approved, being really clear about what the benefits are. It's the first step, of course, and then from there, once you implement a project, you need a process that really makes sure you go back and evaluate those metrics and see if you actually hit them. And in a really mature organization, ideally, whatever those things are, if there is a benefit, it's not just mitigating the security hole or something like that. Although even that's measurable. Do you have less? If you had less attacks or whatever. But if it's a financial measure, ideally they're deployed into the operating budget, right? And so, if you're saying, if Steve's saying, hey, we're going to sell more stuff if we do this, then we should deploy more sales plan. If an operating manager's saying, I'm going to reduce my costs, then their OPEX budget should be lower. And so I think, the more you can put real teeth in financial commitments that are made by making sure it's connected to the CFO's office, and that when you do your budgeting, that stuff's embedded in the financial plan, the higher the accountability and the easier to make sure you're on track if you're not on track. I find if it's not, you have steering committees and all these things, but people will, if it's not like in people's incentive plans or in the financial plan, I find the discipline's a lot lower. So I think the more you can put it in either incentives or operating plans, the more likely you're going to have a lot of rigor around making sure you actually achieve your benefit.
Do you follow a specific, like a periodic review process? And is it always with finance, the departmental heads?
Well, yeah, like I said, I think, if it's, you almost don't need it because you end up having a conversation about it. You do, so you have, most companies will have some kind of balanced scorecard or a monthly review of the OPEX and the sales results and all those things. And if you're pushing it into the sales plans or operating expense plans, it just becomes a big part of the financial review. Well, the reason we are achieving these reduced expenses is because we made all these investments Or conversely, the reason we aren't making them is because IT screwed up and they're not working, right? Now you can debate it.
IT never screw up. Stop.
No, of course not. Of course not. It's always a user issue. Doesn't matter how big or how small.
Amen.
It's a user issue.
Bill?
Yeah, I think when you come to your IT projects, I mean security, you do security projects, you don't get hacked, it was good, right? I mean, there's always that question, did I spend too much money? But generally no one's gonna come at you for that. I mean, your networks are good. Your servers, your networks, your routers, all that stuff, if you have close to 100% uptime, which I think that's what businesses aim for today, then the measure there is good. No one's gonna come back and say, you're not doing a good job. It gets more tricky with the business projects, like the one I talked about. Did we know we were gonna get something like this when we started? No, it was beyond our wildest beliefs that we'd be able to make a big difference and counter what the chemical engineers thought. They thought when they pushed this button up, it would go down, and all of a sudden, no, it's the reverse, and things like that. And then some of your other, like, aside from what we did there with our Power BI and analytics, like we've done things like by product, give the pricing people a scatter chart. So they put in a product and they can see all the different prices we sell the wax for a certain type of wax and how much we're selling, and they can see all the orders and everything else, and then they try to do a pricing. How do you measure that? Like, I'm hoping they're getting a penny or 2 or 3 pennies more because of that information, but how do you know what they would have done otherwise, right? So some things are really hard to measure. You're just kind of, it's on good faith. A lot of this, the BI stuff is on a lot of good faith. I mean, I know people are using it because when we have managed meetings and sales meetings, everybody's presentations has Power BI screens in them. Everybody's using it for all our different business functions now. It's hard to measure. It really is. But they're using it and they keep asking for more, and they say it makes us more efficient and all those things. It's a little bit harder to measure, but you got to get a bit of a feel from your employees and stay connected to the business to know whether you're having success or not. It's not always a numbers thing. It's a feel and making people more efficient.
It's a feeling, yeah. Paul?
Yeah, like I said, on IT infrastructure, it's usually what's not happening that you're measuring. Like, we spend 10 to 15% of our annual budget directly on cybersecurity products.
Do you?
So,
Okay.
like but in that, again, like what's not happening, you mentioned number of attacks, like we have 400 unique attack vectors every month on our infrastructure, 40% of which are not seen by anyone else. So they're curated and targeted and specifically at insurance agencies. If anyone's interested, it's because people in Russia want to know who has a cyber policy. That's why it happens. But the other side for us is very measurable then, backed by the software development, Power BI, and knowing your metrics. We have the upside with in-house software development of being able to code those metrics ourselves, so we don't have to rely just on filling in some gaps or some reporting. In our system itself, it can just say you are slow or you are fast, or at some point also saying like you should sell this opportunity, like it's a slam dunk.
I mean, are you guys celebrating those successes? And I mean, for everybody, do you celebrate the successes? I think that's also quite an important thing, right? I mean, Bill, I guess you guys took a project, ran with it, and then thought, holy crap, actually, this is better than we thought, and doubled down on the efficiency and the outcome that technology is giving you, right? Are you guys doing that too? Is this important?
Probably not enough of it. I mean, just you got it down to 5%, then you wanted 4%, and now we're down to 2%, and probably like to get to 1%, right? And at some point, there's a bottom line to it. But yeah, I mean, it just means we get excited and on to the next plant, on to the next vessel, and it's kind of what we're doing. And we got 5 or 6 more towers, and see what they do. But it's uncanny how predictable the machine learning predicts what's going to happen. Like if the operator moves something up by a bit, you can say, well, that's why the returns went up or down. It probably predicts 95% of the time exactly what's going to happen. If I see the parameters going in, I can tell you what the results on the other side to a 95% level. It's uncanny.
Yeah. Freddie, I know I did want to come back to you. You guys, when all is said and done, you implement, you dissect, and then you maybe do a forensic on the success of it. What does that look like?
Well, yeah. So for us, it was actually pretty easy. Once we implemented the solution in the project, we were factoring a couple of things: resources that we were utilizing to update Excel spreadsheets and get all this data into the system, and we use Power BI and all that stuff. but it came down to reducing costs and the maintenance. So for us was we were evaluating on a month-to-month basis, especially during the winter times where the equipment was running 24/7. So we were seeing, we were comparing to the previous year, the previous months, and trying to figure out what happened before to what was happening with the new solution and the processes that we put in place. We implemented Lean, which also helped line us to a better success to the project, and then see what the revenue or see what the benefits was coming. But it actually, where we actually saw the ROI come to hit us in our face, even though I was putting it to be a certain amount of money to be savings, was within the first 3 days of implementing the solution, where we started seeing a significant savings on number of deployment of mechanics, heavy-duty mechanics, or people that needed to be at the site to work on a piece of equipment for 8 hours straight. Then we noticed a reduction by almost 70% of it, so we didn't have to worry about it. And that's all because the data was in place. So within the quarters that we started reviewing every quarter after that, we started seeing the benefit of actually managing this solution, or managing this equipment and using the data to the advantage for the business. So, some FDs maybe were sacrificed just a bit, which obviously is not what you want to do, but it opened the door, it opened the opportunity to actually re-educate and repurpose some other people to do other things.
Awesome, yeah. What an array, what a range of stories, guys. Thank you. We've got about 4 or 5 minutes left, and if you guys wanted to take advantage of asking this talented pool of gentlemen anything that's relevant to your own internal approvals that you might be going through, or just share some ideas on how we might tackle something, now would be the time. So I open it up to the floor if there are any questions. We have one in the back.
I heard much about POCs. I found that very effective, and I wonder how you guys experienced with it. Proving at one location that this is possible, or setting up the machine and showing that it works, and then it's a no-brainer to say it works. It's not a what-if situation. So what are your thoughts on that?
POCs, proof of concepts. Who wants to grab it?
Our project, that's how it started. It was kind of a COVID thing. It was I signed up for a West Coast Power BI user conference, and I would have never gone out there to do that, but because everything had gone remote, and a slide came up for this one presentation and advertising where they basically had a SQL database on the side, Lytics, their product in the middle, and Power BI on the end. And it was kind of, that's kind of what I'm looking for, some AI that fits in between all that. And sure enough, yeah, they had an offer, a $5,000 offer for doing a POC. And in the POC, in a week, we found the first 2%, and the rest was history for us. So, yeah, that worked well in this project. That's what we did.
Yeah, what we did actually, we actually used one of the sites as a POC. So it's more of a figure out what we needed to deploy, how we're going to deploy it, how much training we needed to provide, figure out what worked and what didn't work, and we used that as a template to actually roll it out to every single other site. So even though it was a POC, we were not proving the software was going to work, we knew it was going to work. It was more about how do we get it out to everybody else without the resistance and without the problems that can potentially come up by not training them correctly. So, so it's kind of a POC, but it's a POC with a bit of training behind it.
Yeah, I mean, it lets you develop and come to alignment on what the MVP should be, right? To roll it out in a non-disruptive and efficient way that's going to create the type of impact that everybody, every stakeholder is going to want. I don't see too many more hands. Oh, we do have one. Yeah.
I don't know if you guys are CapEx heavy or OpEx heavy, but I'm Danny Morales with Aaron's Sales and Lease, and we're mostly CapEx. How do you get OpEx projects where it's a monthly recurring subscription to get approved?
OpEx versus CapEx. Yeah. Ooh! Who wants to take that?
I try to just turn CapEx into OpEx with financing, to be honest. Because once, if I was to tell someone, say about network replacement, for example, if you're on big sites, maybe bills, it's going to be like $50 million every 5 years. They don't like the sound of that. But if I was to say it costs you $800,000 a month to run your network, okay, it gets built into the plan. It's it's more steady. So for me, it's like I try to connect it to the expected lifespan of the equipment, so it never feels like a replacement or an upgrade later.
Is it less risky, OpEx?
Business likes predictable expenses, so if next year I don't drop a 7-figure one-off where they have to pay for 4 years of stuff in advance. So it's like making sure we balance getting the good pricing based on a long-term commitment, but not having to pay it up front at as close to a 0% rate as we can. Then especially for us, like we're a business, our revenue is commission, so it's a percentage of activities is our revenue. So if it fits inside that model, it's much easier, and then it's more like I don't have to make a sales pitch again when that equipment needs to be replaced. It's a continuation of the same expenditures.
No, I think it's fair to say that what I'm seeing as well, and knowing you a little bit, obviously cash is king for a lot of groups like yours, especially in the fintech space. So, I mean, I think moving towards, I see it a lot more with younger companies,
especially in that world. It's you might have an excavator blow up that stops 4 people. For us, everybody works on the same platform. So if it stops, the business stops, and my phone goes very fast.
For us, and I don't know if it's different in a private company, the CFO will look at it and they'll decide what's the best way that's going to save us the most money. I mean, I guess we're lucky we're not cash poor, and they analyze it and decide what's going to cost the less over 3 years, 5 years. We did that. We bought an I-Series last year from Qualbridge, and we looked at the leasing numbers. At the end of the day, we just bought it because they decided that was a better deal to do it that way versus the interest rates in the lease. So I think it's different for different companies.
See, and for us actually, I introduced a cost model, so I'm actually going charging every single division. So if they want from an operational, if they want more licenses for Adobe or Microsoft or whatever the case is, I'm charging them back. Because at the end of the day, it's coming out of their revenue. Whatever the project is, they need the people, they need the technology, they need the resources, whatever the case is. It's easy to go back to them and say, well, if you want this is what it's going to cost you. Even though it's going to hit my operational budget, at the end of the day, they still share some of the burden when it comes to the ops side. And then that's the same thing with the CapEx side of it. So if the business wants electronic timesheets, $750,000, that will be split up across multiple divisions, and then they'll have to pay for it.
Yep. Thank you, guys. Given the time constraints, I'm going to have to wrap up. Cool. All right, well, guys, if you wouldn't mind, give these gentlemen a round of applause, because that was awesome. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Hope to see you around, and please enjoy the rest of QBITS.